Afternoon, everybody. How are you? Of course, I'm going to say you're doing good, even though I can't hear you. Thank you so much for coming here. Welcome to the first virtual annual Global Grief Conference. I am Dorothy McElroy, and I'm the Executive Director of Worldwide Dragon Shooting Day, Inc. And I will let
Jaime de la Parra.
Jaime, thank you for coming in and joining me today. Jaime is one of our board members, and I'd like to start out giving you a little bit of a background about what WWDSD is. So Worldwide Dragon Shooting Day, Inc. started out from the idea of a little boy's dream. I am a widow. My husband died 9 years ago, and our son was 7 years old at the time. And after trying to find a grief camp and things for him, we were able to find one, and they were asked, if you can have a holiday based on your dad, what would it be? What would you want to do? So my son said, I want thousands of archer slaying dragons in honor of dad, and I want to raise money for other kids who've lost a parent like we did, like I did. And a little bit of history, my husband, Dennis, was one of the original artists for Dungeons and Dragons, and archery was something that he and our son started when our son was 3-4 years old. So grief pretty much took us on a whole different path. I really watched and wanted to see what my son needed. And it was archery. So fast forward a little bit, I'm going to explain a little bit about who I am, and I'm going to let Jaime introduce himself and tell a little bit about himself, and then we'll start talking together about what we do and what our mission is and why we want to do it. After my husband died, kind of refocused and redirected things. So I am now a grief support specialist. I am a end-of-life doula. I'm also a level 2 USA archery instructor, and I do a lot of public speaking and also mentoring and peer support. I'll let Jaime take over.
Well, first of all, I would like to thank everyone and Dorothy for allowing me to be a part of this. I hope everybody can hear me clearly. Dory, can you give me a thumbs up, Dorothy, if you can hear me? Okay, great.
You're good.
Wonderful. Let's get the technical stuff out of the way. So just really quick about myself, Jaime de la Parra. I was born in Mexico. Being from Mexico, I have a middle name, Jaime León de la Parra. I do use that for a lot of the legal stuff, but just to keep things short for now, we'll leave that out. But I have a very colorful and rich and interesting childhood background, upbringing, but also dysfunctional and sad. And so as to, one, save a little bit of time and not drop too much of a big bomb, I'm going to just kind of gloss over things quickly, but I'll just start in a nutshell, and then if Dorothy decides for me to start unleashing some of this, I will. But for the most part, one of the things that I'm passionate about is archery, which is what tied Dorothy and I together. For me, archery started at a young age, but unfortunately, archery is also tied into a very dark part of my life, which then I stopped doing archery for many years. And then almost 2 decades after, I'll just say this, the events of my 15th birthday that ended up taking my mother's life. I'll leave it at that for now. After almost 20 years after that episode, I picked up the bow and I started on my own, just to kind of start doing it again out of my own desire. And that slowly trickled into me getting really into it. It turned into my obsession and hobby in regard to traditional archery and instinctive shooting, to be specific. Because even though I grew up doing compound bow archery, modern compound bow archery in the 80s, I wanted to try traditional archery now in modern times. One thing led to another, and after almost a decade of doing that on my own, I was sought out to teach. Now, what I didn't really realize what was happening is, as I was going into my hobby for myself, is that it helped a lot for my own PTSD, if we want to leave it at that. And for me, archery is, I'm a strong proponent of saying that it is a meditation. It's like anything when you get into the zone. And I really wasn't as aware of how much it was helping me. And as people started to approach me and wanted me to teach them, I could not leave out the self-improvement, self-awareness aspect of it. In other words, not teaching the technical aspect. So that's kind of been my journey. It sounds a little vague, but it's hard for me to kind of just give you a quick and dirty. I'm not formally trained. It's all self-taught through either literature, books, or a couple of mentors here and there. But for the most part, I'm self-taught, self-trained. And that is because the world of traditional archery and instinctive archery doesn't have like a set how should I put it, academic pursuit or study. I know Dorothy holds her second level instructor, but that is a slightly different style, obviously more regimented and whatnot. But yes, I went through this more of a, what I like to affectionately call the Jedi Knight route, since it does involve this method of shooting instinctively, or to be correct, subconscious shooting. So very much like the Japanese style of shooting, it relies on a lot of concentration, even though there are some hard steps. But I could really get diarrhea of the mouth here on this topic. So let me reel myself back in. Let me kind of hand the baton over to Dorothy. Dorothy, I'll try to feed on whatever questions, and let me know if you want, how deep you want me to go on my story as it is relevant to grief.
Okay. All right. So we're gonna back up a little bit, and so what Worldwide Dragon Shooting Day really is we hold archery shoots and events around the United States, as well as in other countries as well. And we raise money for children and adults who've been affected by grief and or trauma. Now we do this by slaying dragons. Yep, dragons. It might be metaphorical, but everybody has a dragon to slay. And grief, Jaime, as you know, it's not just about the death of somebody or the death of something. It's about loss in general, and it's any kind of loss. It can be from the death of someone. It could be a divorce. It could be addiction. It can be PTSD. It can be a separation. It can be it really can be anything that you're grieving, that you're losing something. Even it's an essential part of yourself, a medical procedure, anything. And I like to say that we do grief differently, because when you lose somebody, you lose your sense of control. You lose your sense of focus. You lose an essential part of who you are. And Jaime said that he is a traditional archer. I'm a traditional archer as well. By becoming the level 2 that I am, I did that because we teach grief therapy through archery at grief camps and hospice camps and wherever it's needed. So I need that affiliation to be able to do that where I'm at anyways. But I did learn a lot. But traditional archery, and if anybody there who has shot traditional versus compound, so traditional archery would be a recurve bow or a long bow versus compound shooter. With traditional archery, you keep both eyes open. You have to focus on your target with both eyes. Compound shooter, you're focusing with one eye and you're looking through a sight or a peep. Traditional is both eyes open. It's just like life. You need to go at it with two eyes open and see everything around you. Jaime, what do you say?
I agree. It's funny as I'm I'm listening to you. I'm also reviewing how I need to work on my short game of explanation. So let me try to attempt explaining that. Rudimentally, instinctive shooting is basically not using mechanical sights. The equivalent that's always associated to instinctive traditional shooting would be like shooting a slingshot, throwing a ball, anything where there is no aiming sight. And again, the instinctive shooting really isn't a good name for it, because if it's instinctive, you don't have to train for it or work at it. You just do it. So the real term should be subconscious aiming, because there is an aiming procedure that is occurring, but on a subconscious level. It's like throwing darts. You can't consciously aim with darts, but there's a subconscious effort, a subconscious procedure that's going on. And in archery, for the instinctive shooter, you have to train that. A lot of people can become very frustrated with it if you don't have proper training methods or someone that can really understand your methods of learning. And as I've been instructing this since 2011, being able to communicate with individuals and be patient, compassionate, and understanding to teach these techniques, you need to have that. You need to have that in order to be able to pass this information. And everyone reacts differently. So I know I'm, again, getting a little bit off, but yeah, instinctive shooting is basically not using sights consciously, but subconsciously. And again, throwing a dart, throwing a ball, shooting a slingshot. It can be very challenging, but at the same time, it can be very gratifying. There are some people that may take to it easier than most. And that all depends on the individuals. For me, like I mentioned before, it's difficult. It's almost impossible. I cannot separate emotion when it comes to this, because some people that are struggling through this may have some kind of an emotional obstacles, roadblocks, and that can tie into so many things that I tend to trace back to their childhood. Again, I'm deviating from the
No. When you said, no, you're good. You're fine. Because when you said, I like your explanation. When you said everybody has their own path when they're shooting, everybody has their own path when they're grieving as well. There's no right or wrong way to do it.
No,
there's no right or wrong answer. What I love about grieving down the arrow, which I'll call grieving down the arrow, in our case, every time we would shoot archery, and every time we would hit a dragon target, we were whittling away our grief. So
yes,
our dragon is grief. Yours could be whatever yours is.
Yes.
And the important thing about archery is it's, and I'm wondering if you think the same way, archery it's muscle memory. So it's remembering how your body figures out eventually, it knows when you're doing something wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So muscle memory is huge when it comes to archery, but it gives you back confidence that you lost when you lose somebody. And a lot of
Yes.
people will say, I'm not sure I understand that. But when I lost my husband, I second guessed everything I did because I was doing it alone now. So I was a lone parent, lone income, lone decisions, everything. And you're second guessing what you're doing because you're making that decision for two people. And even if you're somebody who's never been married and you lose your spouse, you're still going through that same arena. You're walking around.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I love about archery is that, yes, it can be a competitive sport when you're on a team, but it's all about your individuality and what you're doing and how you're doing it. If you've got
Exactly.
if you've got a child who's lost control or an adult who's lost control and nothing they do is right and they can't do this or that, put a bow in their hand
Mm-hmm.
because you have to focus, you have to concentrate, you have to be breathing evenly to achieve what you need to do. And that's why we say with Worldwide Dragon Shooting Day, we impact the world one arrow at a time because that's what it is. Whenever we hold a shoot, so let's say there's an archery club in California, and let's say, hey, we want to hold a dragon shoot. How do we do this? And this is for anybody who's thinking of maybe holding a dragon shoot. You contact us. We have all the artwork that we can send you, and we hand draw all the dragons. So 3x3, 3x4, whatever you want, whatever your club wants. We show you how to do the dragons, and then you're slaying dragons for the entire time, and the money raised goes towards somebody in your community that is needy and is in need of help. So any money raised stays in the community that the shoot is held at. It doesn't go straight to our nonprofit. It'll go right to your community, which is pretty cool, and it's pretty different from other fundraising and other things that are going on. But we again, grief is just, this is a global grief conference, and I listened to some incredibly amazing speakers that have been on over the course of the 48 hours. And it's so cool to see how everybody is approaching it in a different way. And I think ours is very, very unique because it's different. I mean, when my son came up with this idea at Grief Camp, Wyatt, at 7 years old, the other kids laughed and said it's a dream and dreams never come true. Well, you know what? 9 years later, the dream has come true in almost 70 countries and 40 states. And we've raised, before becoming a nonprofit, we've raised $90,000 for kids and for other families, which is, to us, this whole thing became a reality because of a dream. That's how we met you, Jaime. That's how we've met the other board members that we have. It's just, you never know what's going to happen when you have an idea and when you want to explore it and increase on it. And it doesn't matter, and I'll get into what we're doing as a nonprofit a little bit later. It doesn't matter what size, your arrow is. It can be a standard arrow like this. It can be a little arrow like this. It does not matter what size you have. It's the impactfulness of what you're doing. So we always say you're holding the bow for somebody who can't, and you're slaying their dragon for them when they're unable. And Jaime has a very unique story, and if he feels like it, I'm gonna let him share it. And it'll take a little bit to get through it. But Jaime to us is the original dragon slayer. We came across Jaime 8 years ago, Jaime. 8 years ago,
Possibly.
through a talk that I believe it was a podcast or a talk that Jaime did. And we went back and forth with messages and talked, and it's just been that way ever since. And I would, if Jaime would like to share his story, I would love for him to share it to whatever depth you want to.
Sure. I'll 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 give a very short and condensed. I'm going to drop the bomb real quick, but then I'll that way I can get into how you and I started meeting Dorothy. So in a nutshell, uh, so originally I was born in Mexico, and when my parents divorced in Mexico, my mother came to the United States and she remarried. When she remarried, she got was probably 5 or 6 years old when she remarried, and it was a very dysfunctional marriage. And my mother should have gotten out of that marriage at a very early on, instead of dragging it out for whatever it was, 5, 6, 7 years. But she didn't want to have a second marriage on her hands. But so what I'm about, a lot of the damage that was done to my sister and I, the psychological and emotional damage was in that. And then what I'm about to elaborate on was just kind of the cherry on top, but it was obviously devastating. But inevitably, after a long dysfunctional marriage, my mother decided to get a divorce. And in doing that, that triggered the stepfather to basically take matters into his own hands. And again, I apologize. I'm going to just gloss over it, but it's heavy duty. If we had more time, I'd invite anyone to buy me a beer and I'd give you all the details. But basically, the morning of my 15th birthday, which is on March 31st, this happened in 1988. As my mother was going to work, my stepfather had made the decision to end her life and my family's life, meaning all my relatives. And he basically, without getting into a lot of detail, he murdered my mother he waited for her to go to work, and he waited for her to get into her vehicle. And there's some details that I do want to bring in. That is that we had moved around a lot to avoid him. He was stalking my mother and my sister and I, but we had successfully been hiding out in the city of Dallas, Texas, for some time. But inevitably, he tracked down my mother. So again, the morning of my 15th birthday on March 31st, 1988, as my mother was getting ready to go to work, he was waiting for her, and he shot her in her car 3 times. I'll just say that. And then he went up to the apartment where my sister and I were. It was spring break, so we were at home, not having to go to school. And he forced his way in, and without going into all the details, I ended up taking him out with my bow and arrow. Obviously, there's a lot of detail as to like how did that unfold. And again, just due to time and not to get into such of the graphic nature. Now, for those that know, you don't die automatically. Unlike the movies, you have to bleed out from an arrow wound unless it severs the spinal cord. So even though I was able to inflict an arrow shot, there was still a very dramatic hand-to-hand fight that occurred between my stepfather and I. But inevitably, I became the victor, and he did not. And again, I'm treading on this slightly, and it's easy for me to go into detail because I've had to for my own therapy and discuss it. And also, there's a lot of loved ones and friends and loved ones, relatives that were, even though everyone knew about this, there was a big article, many articles on the following day, on April 1st, April Fool's Day of 1988, about the situation. Still, a lot of family and friends, they wanted to know the details, but very few knew. So throughout my life, I've had to explain the event, one, for legal reasons, whether it was for the legalities that came upon afterward. And again, there's a very rich story behind all that as how it was all dealt with. And then also through therapy, I've had to do that, but also just those that are close and near and dear to me, I also felt compelled to share so that people could understand me because believe you me, I have my highs and lows regarding this. And every year on my birthday, I revisit it. It's gotten better, but anyone that's lost anyone for whatever reason, that those anniversaries come around. So for me, it's quite the horse pill, but it has also caused me to evolve as a human being, as a spiritual being. Uh, and so I'll just, as far as that event, I'll leave it with that. But I'll say that in the bow that was used was a compound bow, and after that event, I didn't touch a bow again for many years. That was my freshman year of high school. Again, I was in spring break and didn't touch a bow. I kind of tried to get back into it. I actually tried traditional archery, but there's just too much there for me. So after joining the military and doing a bunch of other stuff, my career path is also very colorful. With I joined the Army, later joined the Navy, and then did contracting, doing personal security, chasing bad guys, and I was a combat training coordinator doing military training for the last decade. So in all of that adventurous lifestyle, for lack of a better word, um, it was back in 2011 that I decided I wanted to pick the bow back up, and that caused me to kind of have to revisit some of these demons. I had thought that I was dealing with it well, but there's obviously there's so much detail, as anyone would know, as far as depression, suicide attempt, just all kinds of darkness that would go through it, all kinds of self-medication, meaning and just all the things that you're not supposed to do. But again, through all that, and also with me practicing archery, I slowly had to fix myself, even though at the when this all occurred, going back to 1988, we had to see a therapist for all of this. But it was almost like kind of a shock and awe, where I was aware of everything that happened, and I approached it and this became one of my survival mechanisms, where it is what it is, but you don't process it. You just, this is what it is. Life sucks. This happened. Let us move on. And I think I can speak for anyone that's gone through any kind of a traumatic experience, regardless of what it is, that you may be able to take it at first and then keep on trucking in life. But inevitably, that which you did not digest, you will have to start to revisit to digest. And I think that's where the term PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, applies. And it's just not for combat vets. I mean, this could be firefighters, doctors, someone that's had a traumatic experience that's affected them profoundly, that they didn't process it immediately. And even if you do, even when you do see the doctors and the shrinks, it just, you never know when it's going to come back and hit you. So going back to at least for me in my journey, it's just so much that I would love to be able to unpack little by little. But I'll just say this: as much as I had to go to therapy, that didn't work as well as when I chose to go to therapy, when I realized that I was doing things that were a reflection of my childhood. If you guys remember what I said about the damage was done during the marriage, it was in my young relationships with former girlfriends that I was seeing that I was being the abuser or the abusee. Abusee, is that a word? The tyrant or the victim in the relationship, or trying to portray that character role. And when I realized what I was doing, when I was being dysfunctional, let's just say that, when I realized how I was being the dysfunctional individual in a relationship, and I'll never forget when it was like looking into a mirror and seeing that I was the one that was playing this role. It was, I could almost feel the ego split. It was almost, if for anyone that does any looking into the world of self-help or in what's called of either splintered or shattered or separated personalities, this is what happens to a lot of us, where in order to cope, we leave behind a part of us that's hurt. And for a lot of us, that could be that inner child. And some of us may have many inner childs. And you're never going to heal if you can't bring that part of you back into healing. But it takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of work, and it's painful because it's like a festered wound that's scabbed over. You got to rip off the scab and clean it out. And it's one of the most painful things you can do. And I'll tell you what, a lot of people don't want to do it. That's
No,
where the self-medication and the addictions come in to gloss over that. Now, to kind of bring it back to archery, even though I was exposed to a lot of excellent self-help stuff, information, self-help information, a wealth of it, I still wasn't applying it. And archery helped me do that. Again, I'm trying to condense information so I don't take up too much time. But in a nutshell, it was the desire to evolve. It was my desire to let go of the pain, not by masking it, by addressing it. The reason why archery helped for me, one, I mean, it's you have to like what it is that you're embarking on, whether it's golf, a sport, whatever, fill in the blank, martial art, yoga, whatever. You have to, one, it has to resonate with you. But then two, especially when it's the individual sports or practices, it's the going in within yourself. And obviously for me, I liked archery, but archery, it then kind of, you have to, one, listen to what you're being taught. And this is what I tell my students: do what I ask you to do. And a lot of times that causes you to have to zero out the chatter in the mind. And those that have very deep scars of whatever, fill in the blank, that voice, it can become a battle. And that as a coach, I have to quickly realize when people are becoming have that self-judgment or the low self-esteem, whatever negative trait that's distracting them from being in the moment, focusing on what it is that I'm asking them to do as far as form. If they're having a difficult time just doing that and clearing the mind and being in the moment because they got all the different voices, I feel like I need to be able to kind of explain that and then and back off from the archery and then just have a quiet moment with them and say, what is happening? What's going on? I don't know of any other archery coach that would do that, because someone may say, well, that's not my field. But when I step into that role as a mentor and having gone through what I've gone to and done the work, it's difficult for me not to say I will. And I have helped a lot of people, and it can be overwhelming because those that have a lot of struggle, a lot of issues that may affect them in the archery, we are now slowly opening a door. Now in Dorothy with Worldwide Dragon Shooting Day, people are already coming in knowing this. For me, there have been times when whether it's a veteran or someone that I've gotten to know personally, because I let them know how I train and why I train, so they may already elaborate a little bit, then it's not so much of a surprise. But I have had students where all of a sudden they're like, okay, these demons, if you will, these dragons have kind of come up to the surface in what it is that we're doing in archery. And very much the only other example that could be a good universal example is good old Caesar Milan, the dog whisperer. I remember watching an episode where he was trying to explain why a dog, explain to the owner why their dog was acting in such a way. And he had to say, and I mean, he said this many times, it's the owner's energy that's affecting the dog's behavior. Well, guess what? We're all doing that. We all have to be aware of that. In archery, there is no dog. You are the one that's having that energy that may prohibit the way you are performing in that particular discipline. So at the end of the day, as far as dealing with grief and self-help, for me, archery is a tool to somewhat address this issue for the individual to almost see what is happening within themselves. And no, this isn't nothing new. This is the samurai have been doing this. The art of the bow and arrow, the Kyoto, they've always saw that practice as a practice of self-development, even though I forgot the era in samurai history, but there was a time when first it was the bow and arrow was a primary weapon when they were on horseback, but in time it became the katana. The katana became the primary weapon, but they maintained the bow and arrow as a form of that inner self-discipline that to this day they're practicing. And I did one formal lesson of that style of Kyoto, of Japanese archery. Let me tell you, it moved me. It moved me in a way that it was very profound as far as insights. Too much to unpack here, not to, but I adopted a lot of the technical teachings, or I adopted some of the technical teachings into what I teach. But the profound self-reflection is there. And again, Worldwide Dragon Shooting Day, people that go to that, that's already out there in the open. This is what it's about. For me, I like to see myself as that, the quiet, humble little instructor that, whether people find me through Instagram, Facebook, or my website, I'm not out there like trying to promote myself because it's such a heavy thing. And this is kind of how Dorothy and I met. I had, after many years of I'll just, to keep it short. Sorry, guys.
No, I'm going to interrupt real fast, Jaime. We've got a couple of people are asking some questions on the side.
Okay, let's address the questions.
One, not to interrupt, I apologize.
No, it's okay.
One is your program for adults only or children or both? It's for anybody. It's for
Worldwide
anybody.
Dragon Shooting Day?
Worldwide Dragon Shooting Day.
Yes.
So it's for anybody. We've had, you can start archery at the age of 2 or 3 as long as you can hold a bow and it's light enough you can pull it back. Mm-hmm. And you can, I've seen people start archery at 80, 85, 90, whatever. Again,
I've taught those ranges as well. Yep. From little to
anybody. And this is how is your body responding to the grief and recovery? So how your body is responding to the grief and recovery. When you say that it's hard, training and concentrating, and grief is hard. The reason you grieve so hard is because you love somebody so much. And that's why, it's going to be hard. It's going to be difficult. When you said there's highs and lows in training, there's highs and lows when you're thinking about somebody. Grief is kind of like surfing, because you never know what's going to hit you on what particular day. You don't know what's going to trigger you. You don't know what song is going to come on. You're feeling great. You're riding down the road. You're feeling great. And all of a sudden, boom, you hear a favorite song. And all of a sudden you're crying where you just a minute ago were happy. And time is, I'm not going to say time heals everything, because it doesn't, but it does help lessen the ability that you have, so that today that thought and that memory may bring you tears. 5 years later, that same memory is going to bring you smiles. It's going to bring you laughter. It's going to bring, whatever. It doesn't always have to be that same channel that you're going on.
Yep.
And one of the biggest things that we've done through grief therapy through archery is we've condensed everything that we have, and we've condensed it down to miniature kits. So Jaime, as you know, we've got Dragon Slayer kits now. So we have kits, 2 different kits available. One, we have one that you can make your own bow and arrow with, it's a whole kit that you can do with hot glue gun and regular glue. But you get everything you need to make your own bow, arrows, target holder, your dragon target. You get a Dragon Slayer pin, arrow necklace, a little pillow, and we've just completed 2 grief books for children that are coloring books, and one is called Wyatt Slays and Dragon, and the other one is Dad, Can You Hear Me? But these are ways that we're being able to help kids who can't go out to the range or who may live in another state. The other kit that we have also is, it too is a Dragon Slayer kit, but it's 3D printed. So if you're in the hospital, if you have a child that is handicapped, these are all put together for you so that when you open your kit, you can immediately start slaying your dragon. And again, when we were, a week after my husband died, Wyatt and I found ourselves inside a open to the public archery event at a club. And all that means is that you don't have to have a membership to go there. I never held a bow before. So I've got my husband's recurve bow, which is traditional. Didn't know if I could pull it back. Didn't know which way was up. Wyatt had his little compound, and he had his dad's necklace on that had his ashes in it. And we found ourselves shooting at targets, and Wyatt was hitting the target every time, and I was hitting the ceiling, and I was hitting the floor, and I was hopefully not hitting anybody else. But we were doing it, and somebody asked Wyatt, he said, how long have you been shooting? He said, a few years. My dad showed me. And he goes, well, where's your dad now? Is your dad here? And he held up his little dragon necklace with the ashes in it. And he goes, yeah, he's right here. He died yesterday. Allow me to introduce you to my dad, Dennis. And they're like, huh? And I look at me and I'm like, he died a week ago, not yesterday. He's like, well, what are you doing here? Shooting archery or trying to? And they're like, but it's only been a week. I'm like, yeah, but we didn't die. We're here. We're live. We're trying. This is what we're doing. So really, archery became, the bowstring became that connection, that invisible string that Wyatt needed to connect himself to his dad. And archery became our lifeline, and it still is our lifeline. So that's what we're trying to do with the, WWDSD. We're trying to help people get through their grief, walk alongside them with their grief, even though we're not wearing your same shoes, we're walking down the same path. You may have more bumps and bruises than we do. And we may fall into a couple of holes that you don't have, but it's all about trying to bring community together and help each other by slaying dragons. And again, everybody has a dragon to slay, and we're just trying to help each other do it any way we possibly can. For those of you listening, we will, if you're wondering what the Dragon Shoot is all about, we have a Facebook page, and it's WWDSD Inc. Our website is worldwidedragonshootingday.com. We've got local events coming up. We always have a shoot in Michigan at Tomahawk Archers in Temperance, Michigan. We will be traveling out there in June 12th. There's one in Plymouth, Wisconsin, June 4th we're going to be at. We will be in Sheboygan on June 18th for Maker Faire. And then we'll be in Bristol, Wisconsin on July 23rd or 24th. So we invite anybody out there to come out, see us, slay dragons with us. If anybody out there is listening, needs a Dragon Slayer kit, if you're wondering what it all entails and how do you get one, please hit on this chat right here, or go ahead and go to either the website or any of we're on Instagram and LinkedIn and Twitter as well. Someone said Florida. We will certainly have one in Florida. All we need to do is, if you know of somebody in need, contact us. We'll work on finding an archery club out in that area who is willing to help and willing to have one. And we'll certainly get one there as fast as we possibly can. In the meantime, if anybody needs help and they don't know where to go, they can certainly contact us, and we'll do whatever we can to help you. Again, I'm a grief support specialist, certified in that. I'm also soon to be certified peer mentor, so I'm working on getting that as well. And really, it's just, grief is so hard to talk about, and nobody wants to talk about it. This is just, it's great that everyone's coming together. and that we're all doing this. That we're all doing this together in the way that we're doing it. And I am so grateful for Jaime to be a part of our family and on our journey, and for him being able to share and doing everything that he's doing. And if there's, I'm not seeing any more questions right now. Israel said the negative self-talk is down. You're right. That's nothing. We don't want to defeat ourselves. The whole form of archery is being able to build ourselves up, build ourselves stronger. Then we talked about muscle memory, and it's when you practice something long enough, your body just remembers it and does it. But that's not that way with grief. Your body doesn't remember grief. Your brain remembers it, but your body's not going to say, I have to react to it in this way right now at this time. You react to it in all different types. Some people think that kids are so resilient and they do grief. It's so much easier on them. And in actuality, it's harder on them as they get older because they have that wonder. What does mom's voice sound like? What does dad's voice sound like? What are they going to think of how I'm doing right here? Do they, they're not there for my first shave, for my first date. They're not there for my wedding, my graduation. Grief is hard, man. It's so difficult. You're shaking. Yep, it sure is.
Yep. I mean, there's a lot that I can go diarrhea of the mouth again here, but let me tell you, yeah, everything for me, where I'm at, and I'm about to say something that it's easier said than well. I'm trying to be careful also here, guys, because in my path of learning and growing and dealing, the horse pills to swallow become greater and greater. And I'll present one, and this helped a lot. And this came from a First Nations person, and the comment was that when they heard my story, of what happens, and this was actually provided to my sister. This what I'm about to say, that was like, wow, what a incredible journey that you were given so that you could become a powerful warrior. And that was like the first time I heard something so positive, because typically, as much as we are victims of our traumas, of whether, however it becomes, whether we were literally victimized or whatever the case may be, I mean, rightfully so, we are, we are victims, and we were wronged or robbed of love, and fill in the blank. You guys know what I'm trying to say. But on the flip side to that, and this is looking at it from a point of self-empowerment, is like, wow, I've been giving this to deal with. You can say that, God only gives you that which you can handle. On another, from other disciplines and practices, it's that, this was a path paid for you to overcome, so you can grow. So it took me a long time to be able to look at things from that kind of a filter, because rightfully so, every birthday I had every right to be sad for my situation, to be the victim. But I'll be honest with you, after so many years, I kind of it's exhausting to be sad. It's exhausting to grieve. And I think that's why a lot of us, we want to figure it out, correct? So one of the filters to at least that I adopted is like, okay, this is to help me to grow, to become a better person, but also more importantly, to look at what we're doing right now, this second. It's to use it as a tool to help those that need a sounding board, that need somebody to speak to. So that's a huge practice, discipline, filter to wait to look at least what I went through, to like, wow, what a an amazing challenge. And there's more to that explanation that I know when I've tried to explain to some people, they're not ready to hear it. They're not ready to hear it, especially I'm really going to go out on a limb here. So because, people that are like, let's say, rape victims, or someone that in my situation, I mean, my mother was murdered and my life was threatened, but to be able to turn around and say, I forgive you, to those that wronged me, and to say, I am now going to be, I'm going to step away from this victim mentality and own it and empower myself. And there's more to unpack on that, but that helped me a lot. Now, again, if you were to present that to me, 15 years ago, I would have been up your nose with a rubber hose. I wasn't ready to hear that. So it's been a long journey for me to be able to say, I've adopted this now. I still grieve every year on my birthday. That sadness is still there, but I look at that sadness differently. I look at it almost like kind of like a monument, maybe. At the end of the day, it's just I don't want to fight the sadness. I don't fight I let it. I feel it. I own it, and I let it go. Again, it's easy. Right now, it's easier for me to say than it was 10, 15, 20 years ago. And some people, when they hear that, like, let me just say this, because I've been there. The worst thing that anyone that's gone through anything that can be told, when someone says, "Oh, well, you just need to get over it and let it go." Let me tell you, I'm here to tell you. When people, those closest to me would tell me that, and I'm talking, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 years after that March 31st, 1988, you just want to punch them in the face.
Mm-hmm.
You just want to spew a bunch of profanities at them and tell them, how dare you? How dare you? And some people will never get away from that. For me, I was just exhausted of being in that state. And it took a lot to evolve to be able to say that, which what I have mentioned, to look at it from a different perspective. Now, I still have my pity parties. I still have my woes me. It's an ongoing effort, but it's, as it was explained to me, it's kind of like it's a revolution that keeps going up and up. So we think from a linear perspective, like, okay, we're down low and we want to rise up. It's more like a spiral that is ascending, but we're going to circle back and hit on these things, and we may recreate some of these traumas in different ways, or the triggers, but we have to have the maturity to look at the things that trigger us and say, okay, it kicked back this memory. I feel it, but I don't need to flip out. I don't need to go get drunk. I don't need to go punch someone in the face. I don't need to you're going to feel it. I'm still feeling it,
Well, we have to.
But it's the thought process that goes with it. I have you mature to, okay, it's just that, and I use the comment of, I've learned to make my demons or dragons into my best friends, which then transforms them into angels. And let me tell you, I almost got a lump in my throat. I don't want to, I was telling myself, I'm not going to get emotional in front of, I don't know, we got either 2 people or 2,000 people watching this. It's a hell of a journey, guys.
It's showing that you're real. So many people say, I'm so sorry to hear that. I'm so sorry this, I'm so sorry that. I don't want you to be sorry because you didn't cause it. I don't want you to be sorry because you don't know my story. You don't know what happened.
Yeah.
Death ends a life. It doesn't end a relationship, and the things that I've learned, I'm not a stranger to loss. So I lost my mom when I was 17. My grandmother died a few years after her. My sister died after that. My husband died after that. You learn something in every journey that you have, whether it's good or bad. It makes up who you are. And all of these losses taught me that the little things are really what matters most in life. The little things are the big things. You can't take for granted those moments when, your son or daughter comes to you and say, when they're 2, and say, Santa Claus is on the phone. You have to talk to him now. You know what? I don't care if you're in the middle of a meeting. I don't care if you're in the middle of doing what you're doing here. You'll say, hold on a minute. I got to grab this call, because you're never going to have that time back again. And they're going to remember the times when you took the time to spend with them versus when you said no. Because I will guarantee you, Wyatt remembers every time I said, I don't have time right now. I've got to get this done for school, or I have to get this done for this. And I've learned to say, can we do this in 3 more minutes versus right at this moment, instead of saying no, or I don't have time. Because if we don't make time now, we're not going to have it later. And that's one thing with grief is it takes up a lot of your time. And
it's draining.
It's
draining.
It's exhausting.
It's
draining. And if you're doing it right, you are tired.
Yeah. Yeah. You know what? You're right, Dorothy. If you're doing the work, and again, like I said, I've done therapy multiple times, but for me, the best, and just my experience, it's been self-help books, different speakers from different venues, different avenues, different forms of media. And I think at the end of the day, that's what you have to find, what works best for you, whether it's through your religion, your faith, or a combination of whatever. You have to figure it out. But at the end of the day, you have to put in the work if you want to. I like to use the word evolve. I don't like to use the word get better, because if you say get better, it's like you're like, unicorns and rainbows, and it's like no. That's a lie.
Wait, how'd that go again?
My little jig, unicorns and rainbows. Yeah.
And we've got, Jaime, we have 3 minutes left. Just so we know, we got 3 minutes left.
Thank you, everyone. If you're grieving, try to find what works best for you for help. You're not alone. Look up World White Dragon Shooting Day. If you want to choose archery as your avenue. Anyone in San Diego want an archery lesson? Look up Jaime de la Parra or JLD Archery on Instagram, or my website. I don't know how long I'm going to keep my website up, but that's jldarchery.com. But if you want to go and get a full Jedi Knight version of traditional archery with some self-growth, look me up, Wendy, World White Dragon Shooting Day. You want to close it up? And thank you for letting me be here, guys.
No, thank you so much for joining us. And if you can't find Jaime that way, reach out to WWD Estate Inc. Again, Jaime is one of our board members. He does phenomenal work. We are so grateful to have him be with us. Not only
and actually, Dorothy, is that the newspaper article still up on the website on your
yes
on the direct? Okay, so for those that want to know more, that story's on there.
Yes.
But thank you, everybody.
Absolutely. We just want to say thank you so much for everybody joining us today. Thank you so much for your comments, for being here, for letting us share our story. And if we can help in any way, please reach out to us. We'll do whatever we can. And Jaime, love you. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
Remember, it's not the size of the arrow. It's what you do with the arrow and who you're going to shoot for somebody, okay? Keep impacting the world one arrow at a time. That's what we say, and that's what we aim to do. So thank you so much. Nancy's coming up next. Please stay and support and listen to her, and she's got a great program up there as well. So thank you, everybody.